Hello.
Hello.
Hello and welcome everyone.
Stuart, Christine, Sabrina, Morena.
All right. Yeah, it's just after 8 o'clock in New Zealand and 2 something in the United States where you are.
Now 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Well, welcome, kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Welcome to Ako Ōtautahi-Learning Days. It's great to have you here celebrating our learning days and to explore the work of Remake Learning. So I'm just going to share my screen for a quick introduction. Okay. So this session is the Pittsburgh journey, and we're really lucky to have our friends from Remake Learning, Dorie and Greg, sharing some of their ideas with us. I'd just like to start by introducing the work of Ako Ōtautahi-Learning City Christchurch. We have a vision for creating a city that's coordinated, it's equitable, and it's future ready. And for all of us, I think our learning and well-being go hand in hand. They're sort of bound together, and we want to continue the work to make it accessible for everyone. And certainly during lockdown or rahui, it became evident, even more evident, that that's not the case. So that's the mahi of Learning City Christchurch, and we have 3 particular focuses. One of those is equity, one is access, and one is innovation. So our work today will be talking with Greg, the founder and co-chair of Remake Learning and the executive director of the Grable Foundation, and Dorie, who's the producer of Remake Learning. And so it's going to be a really exciting time. So I'll just stop sharing my screen and say welcome everyone. We've got a small group, but I also want to introduce a couple of our other Ako Ōtautahi members. So over to you, Ali. Would you just like to do a quick intro of who you are?
Kia ora whānau, my name is Ali Archer. As Cheryl said, I'm one of the members here. I'm very passionate about learning and providing accessibility of learning to everybody. And how we do that and the changing face of learning is very exciting, I think, for everybody here and everyone who's watching this recording later online. So really I'm here to sit in and listen and take in and absorb all of the knowledge that's about to be thrown at us, and can't wait. Kia ora.
Yeah. Ngā mihi from me, Cheryl Doig, one of the trustees of Ako Ōtautahi, and I'm going to hand over to Erica for a quick intro and just some good tips on how to stay engaged during the session.
Kia ora. Kia ora koutou, ko Erica tōku ingoa. My name is Erica Austin. I am the program coordinator for Learning City Christchurch. And so my background is in architecture. I really believe in learning in a place-based environment, and our environment shapes us, but ultimately we as society shape our built environment. And today I'm really privileged to have Greg and Dorie online with us. So as we've got a small group, it's much simpler to engage. The chat function is our friend, so feel free to use the chat function to put any comments, reflections, any observations, and also use the reaction tool to express how you're feeling. And I also encourage you to use any physical reactions if you like as well. This session is recorded, so we will be putting up this video afterwards on our YouTube channel to share with our networks and friends as well. So, kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. And yes, Sabrina, we were just saying that it's just after 8 o'clock, and so some of the people that are registered will be on their way to work or on, as you are, maybe a run to drop off the kids. So it's all the fluid nature of the times that we're in. So welcome everyone. And so what we're going to do is a bit of a chat session with Gregg and Dorie. And we're going to sort of do this in chunks. So Gregg is going to share a few slides and then we'll have a bit of a chat, and we've got about 4 different lots of conversations to have, and we'll just wend our way through the next hour. So Gregg, I'm going to hand over to you and Dorie to start the session.
Well, Dorie and I are incredibly honored to be here. We feel like we're with some amazing learning allies, and we're learning from you. So thank you for this generous opportunity. I'll try not to like too.
We'd like to be with you in real life.
That's true. That is true. So I'll try not to make too many rookie Zoom mistakes today. I'm going to share some slides to just get us started to talk a bit about Remake Learning and this learning network here in our corner of the world. Again, I'm Gregg Behr. I serve as Executive Director for a private charitable foundation called the Grable Foundation, and also co-chair for Remake Learning. And we're coming to you from Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania in the United States. And as I noted, I'm so grateful and glad to be joined by my incredible colleague, Dorie Taylor. And as we noted, we've been learning from you, and quite a few of our Pittsburgh colleagues have been lucky to actually be there in person, Dorie. We get the Zoom invitation, they got the actual invitation to Christchurch. But we feel like there's been this remarkable exchange over the years between our 2 cities, and we're really learning from each other. And in fact, we're learning from lots of others around the world. And in the course of some comments today, we will refer to IDEO, our colleagues at KnowledgeWorks based in Cincinnati, Ohio, colleagues at Brookings in DC, and 100 based in Helsinki. And we've also been learning from a lot of colleagues overseas like you, also our colleagues at Big Change in London, at Innovation Unit, some amazingly brave educators in Scotland through the Creative Bravery Festival. And if you haven't seen, I would really encourage you to take a look at some of the publications that they've produced about learning clusters, about learning systems, about learning cities, publications from Big Change, 100, and Innovation Unit that are incredibly valuable, I think, to us all as we think about place-based learning that's relevant, engaging, and equitable. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Remake Learning. We'll talk too about some work that we've done through a campaign called Remaking Tomorrow, as well as turn to our own effort to host Remake Learning Days. In fact, today is the coast-to-coast launch here in the United States of a year-long campaign called Remake Learning Days across America. So you can join us in 4 hours if you'd like to for a pretty special hour this evening our time. And one note, you'll hear Dorie and I talk about educators a lot. When we do so, yes, we're talking about those classroom teachers in kindergarten through grade 12, but we're also talking about early childhood educators, about the youth workers and others in out-of-school time programs. So we use educators to capture that broad sense of who it is that's a learning ally to our young people. And of course, we always are focused on young people themselves and what it is that they want and need and what their futures deserve. And like you, maybe certainly not as well as you, we've been navigating pandemics. And we're learning a lot as we continuously learn about the issues of poverty and racism in the course of managing pandemics. And one of our incredible lessons learned over these past number of months is the importance of field building, and why and how it's been so critical that over nearly 2 decades, the city of Pittsburgh and our region has invested in field building organizations, building networks and systems in out-of-school time delivery, in arts education, in early childhood, in childhood advocacy, and certainly in this work that we call Remake Learning. So what is Remake Learning? If you allow, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment because I'm going to share another screen and play a brief video for you about Remake Learning itself.
Creativity, complexity, talent. This is where innovation starts. It starts right here, in our libraries, our museums, our communities, in our schools. This is where the future starts. Whenever we learn something about ourselves, about our community, about our world, the future begins again. And every day, educators around the world are taking risks, reaching higher, pushing the limits of learning. Here in the Pittsburgh region, we call this many things. Learner-centered, deeper, personalized, technology-enhanced, culturally responsive, STEM, STEAM, maker, next generation, 21st century, engaging, relevant, equitable. The future of learning is here. It's in our hills and in our hollows, in our towns and neighborhoods, along our rivers and in the Steel City. This is Pittsburgh. Here, we know where the future starts. See more at remakelearning.org.
So this work, Cheryl, began as part of, we fondly refer to a pancake breakfast that happened way back in 2007. So the work of Remake Learning really began by convening a group of educators, but also technologists and artists and designers and others who were beginning to think differently about learning. It's a small group of people who began to adopt modern learning pedagogies like STEM and STEAM learning, youth voice and youth media, maker-centered learning, technology-enhanced learning. And it really, over the course of nearly 15 years, has snowballed to include schools, museums, libraries, early learning centers, out-of-school time programs, higher education and industry, such that we now have this remarkable network supporting our region. It's a network that some schools or organizations maybe avail themselves of 1 or 2 opportunities a year, maybe a grant, maybe a publication, and others avail themselves of 49 opportunities during the course of the year. It's a network that we talk about as engaging and igniting relevant, engaging, and equitable learning in support of young people navigating rapid societal and technological change. And as we think about access and equity, we're really focused in our region on learners of color, learners in poverty, rural learners, learners with disabilities, and girls in STEM. It's a network involving thousands of educators, nearly 600 organizations at this point, and has redesigned all sorts of learning spaces and curricula, provided dozens and dozens of peer learning opportunities all across our region. That's what the dots on this map indicate. It's a network that has distributed millions of dollars in grants, but oftentimes small amounts of grants, a few $1,000s that maybe allow a librarian to work with a designer in a new way, or an educator to work with a technologist in a new way. It's a network that has pulled together working groups across our region so that clusters of individuals representing myriads of organizations can focus together on computer science or computational thinking and learning, can focus on the future of work, can focus on STEM and STEAM learning, and focus on the things that really are core to their work. We've tried to do a lot of work both locally and with partners nationally and internationally to document this work in a way that's both instructive to ourselves and instructive elsewhere. And increasingly, as we work with educators and learning allies, really finding ways to connect directly with parents, families, and caregivers. It's what you're doing so brilliantly during Learning Days in Christchurch, and it's what we try and do through Remake Learning Days here in Pittsburgh and in other places around the country. We're always focused on the learners themselves. The learner is at the core of all of this work. And as we think about that learner, really trying to connect learners to all of the places where they learn. We often hear these phrases, learning anywhere, anytime, any pace. We're trying to really live that out and help to educators and parents and families and caregivers and the learners themselves tap what's available in the community. Because we've identified this profile that we want for our learners to be able to activate their critical thinking, to be remarkable questioners of what it is that our systems have created, to connect in all the places where they learn and to connect with deep and caring relationships. So it's really connecting what's timeless about learning with new ways of learning. There are all sorts of ways to connect with Remake Learning on the web and via social media. And along the way, we've also produced a playbook that we've used to improve our own efforts, but also communities like Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill in North Carolina, or Fremont, California, or maybe some colleagues there in New Zealand have used to identify how it is that we create a learning ecosystem, a learning cluster, a learning city. And there are lots of other publications designed to support that. So I'm going to stop right there because that was certainly a whirlwind. And I just wanted to give you a taste of the network broadly before we dive into some more specific subject matter. Dorie, did you want to add anything to that?
You covered it all. I mean, this Remake Learning is this entire network of practitioners, of the people educating children, our youth. And when we talk later on, we'll kind of get into bringing the caregivers and the parents in on this, making sure we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah.
Cheryl, this is a great moment if you have any questions or comments.
Yeah, I just look at what you're doing and go, oh, and then I think, oh, we're in our second year and you've been going a lot longer and obviously different contexts and so on. But I was really interested in the profiles and how you came, how you came to develop them.
So that's a process of community organizing. There have probably been about 12 different moments over these past 15 years when Remake Learning has used human-centered design to convene focus groups, workshops, and others to gather data from educators, principals, artists, and technologists, and others to design and redesign Remake Learning. It's a network whose work has been continuously improved upon. And there were about 400 educators and learning allies who about 4 years ago created this profile by which we got to those words to describe what it is that we want from learners in our region. There's also a publication that Remake Learning has produced called Reframed. That's all about the use of graduate profiles and portfolios and other modern assessment tools and practices that schools and museums and libraries can employ. And there are a lot of, for example, schools in our region that have developed their own graduate profiles. Apart from the testing and the other mandates, what is it that we actually want from our learners? What is our aspiration for them? And that tool of a profile enables communities to articulate that. And it was the wordsmithing of 400 people that got us to that profile, Cheryl.
Oh.
I also have a question for you, Greg and Dorie, regarding the connection. I find, connecting all of these spaces together. Any tips on the actions that you took to get these people to go, you know what, yeah, we will work together, we will collaborate with each other and so that we can move forward together? Any tips on that?
I have some, Dorie. Do you want me to go? Do you want to go?
I'll start. Let me just use the word community.
Yeah.
And recognizing all communities. No one community is better than another community, and really being asset-based, showcasing the assets, showcasing the family center or the library or this school or this public park in each community neighborhood. So just making everyone feel good, as they should, about the resource that's right there in their community. And, oh, you see all of these libraries or all of the parks are now going to start talking, or all of the spaces are going to share. So it's recognizing the goodness within a community and a neighborhood and the what they have in common across town or in a rural community or an urban community with their partners.
Dorie's described it exactly right. In some ways, it's classic community organizing and being very deliberate about the outreach, very deliberate about when and where and for what purpose meetings are held, who feels like they're invited in addition to being actually invited, who feels like they belong, finding ways through storytelling, through our website or other materials to uplift many different stories. And then language has been so important too. There's never been, look, we made ourselves lucky, I think, with this phrase remake learning. And I didn't come up with it, Dorie didn't come up with it, so we can't claim credit for it, but it's been a broad umbrella where people can find themselves. And there's never been a moment where we say like, now we shall all do STEM, or now we shall all do technology enhanced learning, but rather just the way each of us on this Zoom call have varying interests. I make wine. I don't know, Dorie, are you a beekeeper? I don't. But we each have interests, right? And like schools, museums, libraries, they all have their own interests. And so some walk through the STEM door, some walk through the maker learning door, some walk through other doors of care and interest and passions that they as organizations hold. And that's okay, because come into the network and then start bumping up against everyone else. And then, you know, through the documentation, the organizing, the working groups, we try and allow for a lot of churn so that in fact people are bumping up against each other and say like, oh, I had no idea I had this amazing connection with this other organization across town. What can we do together? And then the last bit I'd say is little bits of money, right? Collectively in an aggregate, there's no doubt that we have expended many millions, tens of millions of dollars over 15 years. And look, there's no denying the importance of the money, but it really has been distributed in small increments for the most part, that just allow people the chance to experiment and try things together. And that has been so critical. And we continue even into what some might regard as a mature 14th or 15th year in distributing small amounts of money to just allow for that continued experimentation and R&D.
Thank you.
Great.
So sure, I'm gonna jump ahead, because this is another case of having made ourselves lucky. So sometimes you do, in fact, make yourself lucky. And we did so this past spring. So late last year, and this really speaks to that continuous churn in the network, because you can imagine over these years, there were your early adopters. There were schools and organizations that subsequently came along. And then there are organizations that maybe have just gotten involved in the past 1, 2, or 3 years. And we decided that this felt like a right moment to launch a community-wide campaign to celebrate and deepen the culture around remaking learning and what that means. And to Dorie's point, you know, to uplift those stories, to uplift multiple examples, and help us all to see how learning is happening in all sorts of places. We designed this at the end of last year. You could imagine when it launched at the 3rd week in May, we found ourselves in remarkably different circumstances, navigating a public health pandemic, navigating racial unrest, and how this campaign took on a totally different context. It was designed as a 22-week campaign all around what we call Remaking Tomorrow. And by this, we meant this, that we're each called to forge a future where every day holds promise for every learner, where youth, families, and educators connect timeless ideas and new ways of learning to prepare for what comes next, no matter what tomorrow might bring. This is the video that launched that campaign on May 22nd.
You've probably been thinking about the future a lot lately. About how our world is changing. About whether a robot could do your job. About how the way you get to work, or shop for food, or unwind at the end of the day is changing. About what kind of a world future generations will inherit. We've made it through uncertain tomorrows before. That's because we've never stopped wondering, and we've never given up hope. Today, we know more than we ever have. About how to solve problems. About how our brains develop. About how to stay grounded in what makes us human while exploring the frontiers of what humans can make. The future holds tremendous promise. Promise that we can find the potential inside any learner. Promise that together we can nurture that potential in each and every child. Promise that we can let loose the brilliance of an entire generation. That future is closer than you think. But to make a better tomorrow, we have to act today. Let's forge a future that holds promise for every young person. Let's connect timeless ideas with new ways of learning. Let's prepare for what comes next, no matter what tomorrow brings. Learn more at remakelearning.org/tomorrow.
That video still gives me goosebumps. So you'll see in the Tomorrow campaign that we try and use all of the tools of Remake Learning. Storytelling has been a significant part of our effort, and there's been a rhythm of original articles that have been published each week since May, along with then the social media distribution. We've produced some new publications. One that Remake Learning did together with KnowledgeWorks about learning in a post-pandemic future. In some ways, Remake Learning and all of its network members, while attending to the very things in front of us and having been incredibly responsive, also has had the opportunity to say what happens on the other side of these pandemics and what is it that we need to do now to prepare ourselves for what comes later in 2021 and 2022. There was also a second report entitled Tomorrow Today. Nearly $1.5 million of grants have been awarded to in small increments to individuals who are in schools as classroom teachers, who are librarians, who are youth workers and after-school programs, but also some 17 more sizable grants that are very much open-ended R&D-like grants in organizations like the Carnegie Science Center, which is at the forefront of STEM learning in our community, or the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, which has been at the forefront of maker-centered learning in our community. Grants to these 17 organizations, but these 17 organizations in turn working with clusters of schools and organizations to think about what needs to come next in
You need to
in
come
that
downstairs
work.
now.
We've had weekly online conversations with colleagues and young people locally, and then also nationally and internationally, such as with Dean Kinlock, who's the Dean of the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh, and author Bettina Love. There have been weekly sessions around different subject matter, around operational planning in schools, around justice learning, as you see here. Programs designed specifically for superintendents about what's working in schools right now. In fact, we're on Thursday night hosting the second in this current series about what's working in our schools. And there have been big events like a celebration of teachers that was held on World Teachers Day on October 5th, the national launch of Remake Learning Days across America, which happens 4 hours from now, and an event coming up next week about busting boundaries in science, technology, and learning. You can find all of the information cataloged well, I believe, on the URL remakelearning.org/tomorrow. So this feels like another good moment to pause because this, what I've just shared, speaks to some intensive work over these past 5 months that has happened as the continuous work of Remake Learning has continued, right? The meetups, although virtual, the documentation, the events and grant making, all of the core work is continuing to pace while we've also brought attention to this campaign. So there's actually a period there.
Yeah, I was reflecting on how exciting that was, and I think Sabrina had put in the chat box what a powerful video that was, and just reflecting on what that might look like for us and some of the work that we want to do for Ako Ōtautahi-Learning City Christchurch, but that's also happening with the Grow Waitaha space, which is in the schools space, trying to do some of the things that absolutely align with your work. And in the last week, there's been an article produced which got lots of media attention about how we're on the wrong track by being focused on child-centered learning, and that we should be going back to much more of a rigid approach with all children learning the same thing and so on. So I really like some of the ways you have tried to counter that.
Well, it's the work that you're doing and the work that we're doing we're simultaneously trying to impact the mindset and culture in individual schools and organizations, but also in a region, right? I mean, it really is about culture building and a mindset for a region about what it is that we want for public education and learning. And I feel, Dorie, like we're learning this lesson continuously. That work never, ever, ever lets up. And we have to work at that continuously with all of our constituent groups, the media, politicians, administrators, school boards, et cetera. Like that community organizing work never ends.
And in this moment too, Greg, you know, you might have some people saying, this pandemic and virtual learning or hybrid learning, this is terrible. Others might say, wow, what an opportunity. To try something new, or something that we've been doing is really working in this moment.
And so we're also running against a current of, well, let's just get back to normal. Well, there's no getting back. Like we can't get back there. Actually, we don't want to get back there. And this is potentially once in a lifetime opportunity to make some real systemic changes and support learners and educators and families in new ways, which is also why this sort of public culture building is so critically important. It's actually what Dorie's doing through Remake Learning Days too. I don't want to, if there are other, I want to turn to that because I think it segues so well, but let me pause, Cheryl, if there are other questions from you, Erica, or our guests.
Yeah, well, Stuart was nodding madly, so I don't know if you've got a comment or a question, Stuart.
I'm just really intrigued and thinking about time too. We started doing this more aggressively to a point. I'm just wondering from yourself. I come from a tertiary background, sort of that level. That's my level of education here, and obviously we get students coming through to us having gone through schooling in a very traditional model. And dare I say it, some of them, it hasn't suited, it hasn't worked. And we're trying to pick up those pieces and try to put them back together and excite them about learning. It's a space that I've worked in quite for a while now. But I'm really intrigued about yourselves. You mentioned there, some people just don't get it. There's been times where you've been really frustrated and just thrown your hands up in the air and gone, what? And if so, is there any particular area that's been more prevalent than others?
Just before you answer that, I want to build upon Stuart's question a little bit more, add another little layer. I find a lot of things that we're fighting against is protectionism of one's own space, sometimes ego, sometimes this is the way things have done, and that sort of thing. So I just add that layer in there, and let's just get real about the conversation, because we are up against this level of protectionism often as we try and connect these spaces together. So solve the problem.
So Stuart, I've been asked this question before, whether there's obvious opposition. So there hasn't been obvious opposition, but we've also had those moments where we've gone, right? And it's more often because an organization, say a school district or a museum or an after-school program, is really making significant progress, and maybe there's a leadership change. And so we see moments for schools and other organizations taking 3 steps forward and then taking a step back. And this is where, like, we just have to be patient and really meet people where they are. And it's why that continuous community organizing, the continuous documentation, the continuous projection of what's possible is so critical. And telling those stories of what's possible and trying to normalize it. I would say for the first nearly 15 years of Remake Learning, I was incredibly frustrated with the state of Pennsylvania, right? Our state Department of Education. It just felt like a frustrating experience that we were making no progress on regulations or policies, let alone budgetary matters, that would be supportive of things like Remake Learning. And it's really, but then, 4 or 5 years ago, there's a new level of leadership, a different commitment, and we've seen some remarkable progress at our State Department of Education, which obviously has an impact on the 500 school districts across Pennsylvania. And they've distributed upwards of $120 million through something called PA Smart Grants to support sort of cluster building, ecosystem-like activity. And so, you know, it took us like 11 years to have a win like that. Now, ideally, it doesn't always take that long, but I mean, it really speaks to the long arc of justice and why we just keep at this, because it's also been experienced. There's always someone. If it's not the superintendent, it's the 6th grade math teacher. If it's not the head librarian, it's the children's librarian. There's always someone who's ready to move forward, is willing to, and our job is to find ways to support that person or that department or that organization when they're ready. Dorie, what would you add to that?
Get parents talking about it. And agreeing. My child needs this, you know, social emotional learning, this hands-on learning, instead of having parents say, you know, what is this? You know, are my kids still taking their tests? Are they still going to be college bound with this hands-on learning? So it's the way to talk about it with families and caregivers. And parents as well. And when they have buy-in and say, wow, we need this in our school district, then.
So Dorie, let me set you up to talk about Remake Learning Days, if I may, because yet again, Dorie has hit it right on the head, right? So we had this aha moment in Remake Learning in one of those design sessions to which I referred about 5 years ago, in recognizing that Remake Learning itself is a network of educators and practitioners who are learning allies, which is important. And we decided, like, that's what it ought to be. And yet we need to do the work too of helping parents, families, and caregivers understand how learning is being remade, why it's being remade. If their kid is lit up by something that's not familiar to them, like invention education or coding or technology enhanced learning or whatever it might be, how to support him or her in our region as a learning campus. And then, to Dorie's comments, really start to build the interest and demand on the part of parents, families, and caregivers, such that when they're going to that school board meeting, when they're talking with the teacher, when they're talking with the librarian, they ask questions like, can we do this? Why aren't we doing this? How might we do this? Because we feel like that's where the work ultimately becomes sticky. Otherwise, it has the potential of being incredibly faddish. But if parents, families, and caregivers start to demand this, we'll have reached something quite different. And so, so we've really, through Remake Learning Days, been focused on parents, families, and caregivers. Remake Learning Days began here in the Pittsburgh region in May of 2016. And it's really all about, as we described, powering your child's future. Dorie and her colleagues have sought to make this really personal to families and to create all sorts of events where kids together with adults are learning in family-friendly, wonderful ways. While launched here in Pittsburgh in 2016, it's work that's now taken root in now 16 different cities, regions, or states across the United States. And as we mentioned, today is the national launch for Remake Learning Days across America, which will occur at 7 p.m. US Eastern Time. So let me turn to Dorie to talk a bit more about Remake Learning Days across America, because we feel like this work is ultimately the work where we'll achieve real gains in the broader network of remaking learning.
Thank you, Greg. So a few points to make. One, you got the lovely introduction about the Remake Learning Network. And again, this group of educators in school and out of school, these practitioners, and they show up and come together to talk and to do. And they are participants in lunch and learns and professional development. Through our own surveying of this group, one thing they appreciate is being asked to open their doors for Remake Learning Days. So they very much appreciate what they receive as being a member or a part of the Remake Learning Network, but they are proud to, as a school, open their doors for families for Family Science Night. Or the libraries are thrilled to be able to show what they do for, you know, pre-K to 12th grade students. So that's something that is really powerful, to know that, again, they're pleased and happy to be a part of this network that's going on almost 15 years, but they want to give back to the community. And they, every year, are pleased to be asked to showcase an event, whether it's an arts event, maker, outdoor learning, science, technology, or youth voice event. Another point is that you really get to see children open up and enjoy themselves when they have a caregiver. Maybe it's a grandma or their uncle or aunt or a parent who's with them during the festival, and they're engaging in these learning activities. We did work with the Global Family Research Project, and they looked at survey data from youth, from the caregiver, and from the event host. And it really showed that, you know, kids said, when my adult is with me, it makes it even more fun to learn and to show them that I know how to code a robot, or to see my parents or my grandparent not be afraid to learn how to do something new. So there's just this great impact for a family when we have them with the Remake Learning Days Across America Festival, engaged in all types of, again, hands-on learning. We have those 7 themes, and you know, opening the doors to all of these assets in the community and across town and downtown. It's great to have the whole of 16 regions participating. That was supposed to be the case for 2020, but of course with COVID-19, as you're familiar with, we did have to postpone that, and we're all coming back for 2021. You'll hear more about that at the launch if you tune in later. But events are going to happen whether they are in person or virtual, or perhaps a hybrid. One great thing that educators saw in our area in Southwestern PA, we had a lot of out-of-school time providers who helped schools by providing kits, maker kits, activity kits that families could pick up and then use as part of their educational experience, if it was in school time or out of school. So that's kind of a hybrid of, you know, we will drop off this packet to your door, or please have someone drive by the space and pick up this maker bag and, you know, use it for the whole week or for the whole month to aid in your learning. What else about Remake?
So we're going to be directing those 16 regions to take a look at your great work this week, right? And we certainly invite all the parents, families, caregivers, educators in Christchurch to you know, to participate virtually with us, because it's no longer just a festival, as incredible as that is. It's a year-long campaign with all sorts of online opportunities for families to learn together with young people, and we would invite all of you to join us from halfway around the world. And also, I'll note that today, 100 out of Helsinki is releasing a new report about the 16 regions that are hosting Remake Learning Days, and highlighting work that they're doing in their respective learning ecosystems. And I have added to the chat the link for that brand new report and video.
Great, thank you. And there's the Remake Learning website, but there's also the Remake Learning Days website. Heaps of amazing resources, and if any of you are interested, the launch that is happening today for Remake Learning is at 12 o'clock New Zealand time, lunchtime.
Yeah.
A perfect time to join.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll put in a link to the YouTube.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
So Cheryl, how about, I thought maybe we could end by pointing to some things where what we're wrestling with as we look to the future, because I'm sure they will similar to the very things you're wrestling, and we'll be wrestling together.
That'd be great.
So I'm going to share my screen again, if I may. So just like you, we've been wrestling with a lot of questions, and I really like the way that our colleagues at IDEO in San Francisco frame some things, I think, for all of us. That what if this is the moment where equity really takes center stage, and how will we navigate and support that? What if we bent time to better meet the needs of students and thought differently and genuinely about what it means to personalize learning experiences and not go back to the same thing for everyone, but really meet the needs of individual learners? What if our families, as we've been discussing, really served as amazing learning allies alongside teachers? And how might we support parents, families, and caregivers differently in support of that? What if we continue to expand the boundaries, as you and we have been doing, about learning and how it happens anywhere, anytime? And what if this really, 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 really is our big chance to capitalize and catalyze relevant real-world learning? So as I had mentioned, we've been wrestling with the future of learning since the very beginning of Remake Learning. It's always been a core thread, and we worked with our colleagues at Remake Learning, at KnowledgeWorks rather. And you know the work of KnowledgeWorks well, I know, in Christchurch, and how our colleagues at KnowledgeWorks think about there are things that happen to us, but then there are opportunities for us to shape those futures. And as we think about our preferred futures, how is it that we arrive better at those places? In May, as we undertook the Remake Tomorrow campaign, our Remake Learning Council, which is a consortium of about 60 CEOs and superintendents from schools, museums, libraries, businesses, but also learning scientists from places like the University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon University, we set about trying to think about our preferred futures. And we framed it through three lenses. One, a lens of justice and what it would mean to renegotiate power imbalance and dismantle barriers and promote anti-racist practices. A second focus on relationships. We know how core those relationships are. Dorie, in talking about Remake Learning Days and throughout our comments here, it's not just new ways of learning, it's what's timeless and classic, and how we think about whole child development and practice. And then a third focus on the methods by which we're going to arrive at those points. I'll say for my own purpose, as I went into these conversations, one of the things I was thinking of is, what if our departments of education were instead departments of learning? What would that look like if it was the Pennsylvania Department of Learning and not the Pennsylvania Department of Education? And how might we structure things differently? As a group on the Remake Learning Council, we identified elements of our preferred future. There were some things that you see here in blue that have long been at the forefront of our thinking about what we do need to do to remake learning. And then the ones in red are ones that, while maybe not new, we felt were particularly urgent in this moment, about technology access, about personalizing competency-based learning, about anti-racist practices. And as I noted, we ultimately put together with KnowledgeWorks this publication entitled Remaking Tomorrow. And in it, we tried to identify some very concrete ideas. So it's not merely just aspirational, but we tried to imagine things that we want to bring into being in this world. I'll give you one example, it's right there in the middle. What if schools had full-time directors of relationships? You know, 10 years ago, it was a complete anathema for schools to have directors of instructional innovation. Those things are fairly normal now. Most school districts have a director of instructional innovation or an assistant superintendent or someone who's charged with those significant responsibilities. But what if we had a director of relationships who was really focused on building the social capital of students and helping students to network, who really connected with the community and connected an ongoing pulse beat-like survey of what it is that families need? What if we really institutionalized this idea of relationships and found ways to make it easier for schools to facilitate that new relationship that families want to have with schools? So there are all sorts of examples that we tried to articulate that. And in the coming year, we're going to make available, one, we're going to continue the Remake Tomorrow campaign here regionally. But two, we're going to make available more funds for what we call moonshots. How can we seed idea making, ideation, experimentation in our schools, museums, and libraries for that post-pandemic future, so that, you know, maybe a school tries to introduce a director of relationships, or a school board says, yes, let's introduce a community advisory board that works alongside of us in a new and profound way. And that's, you know this well. I feel like we're, Dorie, continuously learning this work, but it's the continued experimentation of what's best for those learners, keeping the learner at the center of everything that we're trying to do. So again, there's a period there.
That's great. And see Ellie scribbling madly, that's always a worry.
I have a question.
Right.
There's a lot of work done in terms of how do we authentically tell our stories, especially with the various different regions that the Learning Days will cover. How are you encouraging those communities to authentically tell their learning stories?
Dorie?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I can tell you from 2019, that was the first year of Remake Learning Days across America with a total of 9 regions. And my co-producer, Yu Ling, and I were able to travel back then and see some of the festivals in real time, in real life. Eastern Kentucky is very rural, and there was a big emphasis on intergenerational learning and having actually young people go to senior homes, so homes for older adults, and work on hands-on activities together. They worked on sewing and quilting, you know, some traditional ways of making and doing, and it was very specific to that region. Again, learning from your elders or learning with your elders and learning traditional ways of making and creating art. Chattanooga, Tennessee had a very distinct learning style with these learning labs in all of the middle schools and high schools. So I visited several labs and saw these students working on products that they could then sell and make money from. So it was fascinating to see, really, out of those 9 regions, there was, each one had their own flair, had their own strength, and that probably does show up when you see the 100 report that was just launched today about the 16 regions. You know, there's an innovation from each of the 16 regions that that stands out. And you know, some things are universal, but some regions really just, it's so specific to that area. So hopefully that answers.
And so I would say, Dorie, the most significant expense for Remake Learning Days here and in other regions is actually the documentation, the storytelling, the marketing. It's a lesson we learned from our own experience that we've tried to apply in all 16 sites that are now hosts. Mm-hmm. And also, I would say, specific to Southwestern Pennsylvania and the Remake Learning Network more broadly, we've actually invested in storytelling workshops, right? Unlike enterprise businesses and business schools will tell an entrepreneur the second person you need to hire is a director of marketing. Schools and other learning organizations, the director of marketing is not among the first hires or the place where they make significant investments. So we've tried to attend to what is the work we need to do to build the capacity of school leaders and educators to become storytellers. And mindful of the differences among communications and marketing and storytelling. And so we've engaged professionals who've provided dozens of workshops for educational leaders at this point. And in fact, one of the forthcoming series for the Transform Tomorrow series that we mentioned, there was one about justice learning, there's one about what's working in schools right now. In the winter, it's going to be focused on storytelling and how do we empower and prepare educators themselves to tell their stories, because they have amazing stories to tell. And we can help tell those stories, and we'll amplify them and spotlight them, but they're the best storytellers themselves.
That must be music to your ears, Erica.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's it's been a really great, I'd like to say a brainstorm, as in my brain is stormed with all sorts of ideas and ways that we might be able to move forward, but just the excitement of the work that you're doing and the work that you have made so readily available to us to learn from and beside. And we really value the ongoing relationship with the Remake Learning, and certainly will be part of the launch and the activities, and I love the idea of it being the ongoing thing and not just a festival as if learning happens just at one point. So we'll just start to bring things to a close. I'm just going to share my screen for
I just want to make one last comment with building upon what Cheryl's just said. A lot of us here are dealing in multiple spaces, either in governance, leadership, learning, bringing all those bigger spaces together as well, and regular check-ins with our friends and our partners and our whānau, our family, doing what you're doing over there. That's super important for us to share our successes, our challenges. So I just really want to nail that and just say, let's make it a regular thing that we're catching up with each other. Yeah. And thank you for your time.
Well, we've been so grateful for the exchange over the years, and we feel just so deeply indebted to you all. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think we're going to just share this video. I can imagine lots of hosted events where we talk through this and make it. I think we should make this compulsory viewing for the whole city. Yeah, so we'll work on that cunning plan.
Cheryl, do I have one more second?
You do.
I have to say, I feel like Gregg and I could be a testimonial, because we actually are parents. And I just have to say that for the since 2016, past 4 to 5 years, I've taken my small children to Remake Learning Days events with me. And it's been amazing to watch, them come to life and be energized, because they do go to traditional school. And they are amazed at what happens when you're not in school and other learning that can happen. So it's almost, tear-inducing. But
Well, it becomes so personal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, tomorrow, one of our events tomorrow night is using ePro 8, which is a technology kit, and it's a bit of a pilot of intergenerational learning, where students bring parents, grandparents, etc., and in teams of 4 they're working on creating some things together. So I think that's just a little snippet of the sorts of things that we might want to do in an intergenerational way in the future. So I think there's lots of great opportunities. So I'll go back to just sharing my screen and just remind people that learningcitychristchurch.nz is our website, and so we're in the middle of Learning Days, but that's where we'll be putting resources, and these sessions are being recorded, so they'll be available on our YouTube channel, and we'll send that information out. If you do want to know more, you can get us through our email address. And to just bring it back to this place of Christchurch and acknowledging mana whenua, the people of the land, Ngāi Tahu, who have gifted us this whakatauki, Okuhatia tō waka, kia kumia e te au, kia puhia e te hau, ka huri noa tia tō hoi, ka aro tonu tia ka whitu. Tighten the bindings of your waka so that when pulled by the tides and blown by the winds, you can but turn your paddle and continue to heed the stars. So I think that's probably a good way to sum up the times, the turbulent times that we're all in at the moment, and in both New Zealand and the United States. We're in the middle of elections and a whole lot of other responses to pandemics. It's a really important time to continue to heed the stars and move on. So join me, everyone, with a hands or a clap or one of the signs, and thank you so much, Dorie and Greg.
Thank you. Thank you. Be well, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Kia ora, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.